Australia and the US are very similar, but they're also very different. After growing up in the US and moving to Australia, I was shocked with how many differences are between the two countries. After living in Australia for almost 2 years now, I've gathered a full list of differences that I'm going to share with you today. Some of these will be a little controversial, so leave a comment down below on your thoughts and what you think about the differences between the two countries. Now let's jump into 10 differences that I've noticed between Australia and the US. Difference number 1. This is about the different cities in Australia and America. Even when you look at the size of the two countries, they're actually quite similar, but they differ a lot in population. In Australia, the population is 26.2 million, but in America, the population is 333.3 million people. Now, these are stats from 2022, but they're quite accurate in showing the size between the two countries. Even the state of California has more people in it than all of Australia. Because of this, Australia is very condensed into its cities, and the rest of Australia, the rural parts, is all just quite empty. And a way that you can really visualize this is looking at light pollution from the two countries. If you look at the US, you can see a ton of light coming out of it, spreading from the East Coast. There's a little bit of gap in the middle, and then all the way over to the West Coast as well. But if you look in Australia, everything is just so condensed in those cities, and everywhere else just looks quite empty. Difference number 2, public holidays. In America, the public holidays are very government focused, where it'll be like MLK Jr. Day or Independence Day or George Washington's birthday, for example. But in Australia, the public holidays are a little bit more sports centered. For example, recently we just had the AFL Grand Final off. We also have the Melbourne Cup coming up, which is a bunch of horse races, and we really get the day off for that, which is crazy. For you Americans watching, that's like having the Super Bowl as a holiday. I recently just filmed a video on my perspective from the AFL Grand Finals, so feel free to watch that if you're curious.
You have to train for 2 seasons. You have to like have the balance.
Difference number 3 is student debt. You might have heard some horror stories of Americans in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. The school system over there is quite expensive for universities, and it just keeps increasing. So if you're permanently living in Australia and you go to university, your university tends to be on the cheaper side when we compare it to US dollars. However, if you're a student coming from overseas, you do have to pay out of country tuition, which tends to be a lot more, and that's where Australian universities get a lot of their money from, is from international students. Now, one thing I found out which is quite interesting about how student debt is paid back. In America, when you get your student debt, it's a loan through a third party. However, in Australia, your student debt is paid through HECS. HECS, from what I understand, is like a government loan, and how you end up paying it off is actually it comes out of your paycheck directly. In your paycheck breakdown, where you have things like superannuation or the American equivalent 401k, maybe you have your other taxes coming out. But if you were a student and you had student debt, your HECS would be paid out from your direct pay. Because in America, you have to set up everything and make sure you're paying your student debt on time, where in Australia, it's all quite automatic. So I find it's quite a smart way for Australia to make sure people are paying back their student loans. I still have some student debt over in America, and it's so saddening. I wish it just came out of my paycheck, but no, I have to go send money over every single time. Difference number 4 is voting. So in America, it's completely up to you if you want to vote or not. In Australia, it really surprised me though, because voting is mandatory. So because I'm an Australian citizen, when I came in, I had to vote. Otherwise, I would receive a fine in the mail saying you have to pay because you didn't vote. Because in America, there's a big emphasis on having the right to vote, and not everyone exercises that. But it was quite surprising because in Australia, you have to vote, otherwise you get fined. Number 5, ordering drinks. Okay, I want everyone to close their eyes and imagine that you're going out to the store. It's a really hot day, you're super thirsty, and you go up to Macca's, that's McDonald's for you Americans, and you go up to the person taking your order and you say, I would like a lemonade. What do you think you're getting? Are you thinking that you're gonna get a lemon juice, sugar, and water drink? Or are you thinking of Sprite? In America, you'd be thinking that you would be getting the former, but in Australia, you'd actually be getting Sprite, and that's what they call lemonade. I was quite surprised because when I ordered a lemonade, I was expecting the lemon juice one, but no, I got Sprite. And I'm sure a lot of Australians do that when they head over to America and they ask for lemonade. Number 6 is playing sports in university. In American university, sports is a very big part of the culture. Think about football games or basketball games or attending a track and field event. Everything is very sports centric. Even a lot of the fashion that I see now is related to American culture. There is just a big culture in America around sports, but then specifically at university, there is a large portion based on sports. So I was actually a college athlete in America. I played soccer over there. It's quite interesting because when you're a student athlete, you get given extra kind of perks. For example, you get to pick your classes earlier than other NARPs. NARPs is non-athletic regular person. That's what we would call non-athletes at school. And even though the universities say that you're not supposed to get extra perks, sometimes you find that there are little things that you get given. Obviously, there's lots that you have to sacrifice at the same time when you play sports in college, but there is still a bit of help from the university to make sure that's an easier process for you, and choosing classes is one of them. But one fun thing about playing sports in college is that you can actually get a sports scholarship. So I got a partial scholarship when I was there, so I have some student debt, but a lot of it was paid off through the scholarship. But in Australia, you don't actually get scholarships to go to school for sports, which I found quite interesting. It's mainly just academic and financial help that you would get in terms of a scholarship. So in Australia, if you are really good at a sport, you're normally doing it outside of school. Yes, they do have teams where you can play like soccer or you can play basketball with other people from your school, but it's not super closely organized to the school and it's more recreational. It's not a professional team that's supported by the university. Number 7, how we store eggs. This is kind of a funny one because when I was in America, every time I'd be looking for eggs, you go to the refrigerated section. But I was shocked when I came to Australia and I was looking for eggs and I was going around the store, loops and loops, just looking everywhere, just all in the refrigerated section. And I was like, do Australians not have eggs? What is this? I cannot find a single place to find eggs. And then I finally asked a worker where are the eggs and she's like, oh, they're down in aisle 3. And I'm like, there's no refrigerators there. That's so weird, but whatever, I'll trust her. And I walk over to the aisle 3 and I find that the eggs are just stored on the shelf. And it made me feel like an idiot because of course, eggs are shelf stable, like they come out of a chicken on the ground, you know what I mean? There are other stores that I've been to in Australia that do have their eggs in a refrigerated section, but I just found it so interesting because I would never think that a grocery store would do that. I know it makes eggs last longer if you do refrigerate them, but I just kind of found it was quite surprising. Number 8, coffee culture and brunch culture. In America, it's quite normal for you to like go out for brunch and maybe get coffee with your girlfriends. It is still a normal thing to do, but since living in Australia, I definitely go to brunch and go get coffee way more than I was doing in America. In America, it's more seen as like a fast, quicker pace in terms of going to grab a coffee. It's normally like in a takeaway cup and it could be drip coffee. In Australia, the coffee culture is crazy, especially in Melbourne where I'm living now. All really focused around quality of the coffee. You would never see anyone going to Starbucks. There is a Starbucks in the city, but I don't really see anyone go to it, to be honest. There are so many other great coffee to try. So if you're American and you ever come to Australia and you buy Starbucks, know that I hate you. So with brunch in Australia, because there's no tip and because taxes is included, I feel like it's more affordable to go out for brunch. So that could be the reason that I just go to more brunches now that I live in Australia. I think it's more of a culture of slowing down a little bit, hanging out with your family, hanging out with your friends. I know that's still something that you do in America, but I feel like it's quite emphasized to do in Australia. I feel like the typical Melbourne girls weekend is Saturday morning, wake up, do a fitness class, and then go to brunch in your workout gear. I feel like I see so many people do that, especially when I used to live in Richmond. That was just everything that I would see on a weekend is girls walking around and guys walking around in their workout gear and then going to brunch and getting a coffee. Difference number 9 is UV protection. In Australia, it's quite known that the UV is really It's so bad, and people who come here from other countries just don't realize it and just get super, super sunburnt. In America, the UV is quite healthy, which is nice. So you normally can go out in the sun for a good couple hours, and maybe with some light sunscreen, you don't really have to worry about it. But in Australia, you can get burned in like 15 minutes, which is crazy. Because of that, there have been a lot of campaigns on being sun smart. Their campaign was known as Slip, Slop, Slap. So getting people to, I think it's like slip on a shirt, slap on some sunscreen, and slap on a hat. So because of that campaign, a lot of skin cancer rates went down in Australia. But at the same time, I think it's something like 1 in 2 Australians get skin cancer, which is very, very scary. If you're coming to Australia, wear a ton of sunscreen because the sun can really damage you. I even find that the quality in sunscreen is quite different from American brands than it is from Australian brands. So even if you're coming over to Australia on a trip, buy your sunscreen in Australia because it will just be higher quality and will protect your skin better. If you made it this far in the video, please leave an Australian flag emoji down in the comments so I know that you're a real one. Now we're getting to number 10 of the differences, and that is school holidays. In America, it's quite known that you go on a really long summer break. It's about 3 months long. In Australia, you would call it holidays, but in America, you would call it vacation. In America, it's all this whole big summer vacation. You go out with your friends, maybe you do like a summer camp. In Australia, however, the holidays are a little bit different. It's almost like every quarter, every like couple months that you would get 2 to 3 weeks off, with a larger one, I think around like Christmas, which is about like a month. Although you don't get like a full summer break of 3 months off, you get more of these like standard longer breaks, so you can plan a lot more holidays rather than going on like one giant one. I'm actually quite curious what you guys think about summer in America or summer in Australia in terms of holidays. Which one would you prefer? Would you rather take a giant 3-month holiday, or would you rather take a bunch of smaller ones that are like 2 to 3 weeks? Leave a comment down below, I'm curious. An extra difference that I wanted to throw in is the flies and insects. In America, the flies are there, but they're just not as annoying and they're not as big. But in Australia, the flies are so huge and there's so many of them. It is so annoying. Like every time summer comes around, I forget how annoying the flies are. They just like stick to your face different and they just annoy you different, and I just hate flies. So at least I'm living in Melbourne where the flies aren't as bad, I feel like, but up north, like all the insects are crazy. I wish I knew that before coming to Australia for sure. So if you enjoyed watching this video of the differences between Australia and the US, I have 3 other videos that you can watch to get updated on more differences between the 2 countries. I also have a couple other videos around some vlogs of what it's like to live a day in the life in Australia, so feel free to check those out as well. If there are any specific videos that you want to see in the future, definitely leave a comment down below and I'll see if I can make a video on it. As always, thank you so much for watching.